Took me a second to get organized. Hope you guys had a good week. Sorry about not doing a show last week. My back was really bugging the heck out of me. Everything decided to seize up. Still working through it. Price of arthritis. Don't get old, guys. So, I hope you don't mind that I've kind of kept you guys focused on the trail talk a little bit this week, because that was one of the first communication forms that Jenjin started using around me. And, my grandmother also utilized that a lot. And evidently my mom did too. So, you know, I wanted you to see how the patterns change, how they stay consistent, and the placement of things so that you can get an idea of, a little bit about their thinking pattern and how they express themselves. It makes it easier to, find that sort of thing in the wild, as it were, be it on a path, a trail, or out hunting, whatever, hiking. You know, you'll be able to see that and go, oh, okay, I know what that's about. And then, if you find Kana, because that was something that Jen Jen also utilized on the ranch. She set kanji down and kana down like a lot, everywhere. And my mom was always translating that stuff. So yeah, I was going to do a little bit of a discussion about her and her behaviors on our property and some of the things she did and didn't do. Uh, yeah, I'm doing a little bit better today. So she had a grass trap that she utilized, and it was for small game. Mostly, let's see, I'd pull baby rats, juvenile rats, mice, lizards, frogs, snakes, birds, and she'd bait them. She baited the little traps with like seed, and they're very intricate. So let me turn this around and show you what her trap style was, if I can get this thing to focus a bit. Okay, so she made these in our field. We had a 10-acre field. Let me back up a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Maybe put a little more light on it. So these showed up the first season she was there in our 10-acre grass field. So they were just really simple traps, and we didn't plow our field, so it still had like the trickle paths of water drainage and whatnot, like natural, much like a pasture does. You have to be careful putting your cows on something like that because they'll trip in those little spots. You'll get, high clumps of grass with little rivulets around them. And we did have a spring out around the area where, just a natural top spring that seeped to the surface, very close to where she put her grass traps. So she'd take one of these little elevated clumps that had, rodent evidence around it. And I did notice that she broke the traps up. So she did 8 in one area and then 2 in another, closer to the spring. So she'd take this clump of grass. It was Johnson grass she was working with, so that stuff gets pretty tall in this valley, 3-4 feet, 6 feet if you're really letting it grow. And she'd take the center of the clump and she'd twist it with her hand and just kind of spiral that grass on the inside and kind of smush everything flat in the middle. And then she'd take the remaining grass around the outside of that clump. And these clumps can be 2 feet, 3 feet in diameter, some of them. And she'd pull it all up to a teepee point. She'd twist the top, and then she'd stick the top back down in the grass, teepee top to make it stick. And then she'd put her hand in it at an angle, and she'd make these little slits in the side. And she'd bait this inside with seed and stuff. So she'd put her hand in, she'd make these kind of overlapped entryways. So a critter would come in, but when they were inside the circle, they couldn't see their way out because she put these little entry points, and she did 3-4 around the trap, at an angle. So once the animal came in, they couldn't see which way to go out. And then the ones that were closer to the spring, she modified. And this is the one I tried to show in some of the very first videos I produced. I was trying to show you how the bottom of the trap was made with spiral grass and then the loop. She modified these in particular for catching snakes, frogs, and lizards. And she'd set the majority of this loop on the afternoon sun side of the little grass teepee structure. So she was trying to get them to actually hang out and warm in these areas too. So she was kind of constructing an environment in some aspect with this trap, which I find to be very interesting when you're thinking about the mentality of these beings. And then, the top was just twisted and stuck back down on the top of the glass. So the other one I wanted to cover is the funny little things that she did to maintain her menstrual count. Because she actually did record it, and she had a little device to help her. So she made a twisted cord, and I saw her make this cord out of elm bark and one of them, and she'd replace these when they wore out. She'd make a new one every month. Some were made out of elm bark, some were made out of twisted grass, uh, alder bark. She used a strip of willow bark once. So yeah, there was a multitude of different uh, types of material she'd use to make these with. But she'd count the days when she didn't have menses. And then she'd make a gap spot when she started, and she'd make the count for that. And then during the process of her menses, which was normal, she had a 28-day cycle. The weird thing is all the women on our mink ranch, my mom, my two sisters, I was too young, oh, and my grandmother who was still menstruating, they all cycled to her cycle. The alpha freaking female on the ranch. Bizarre. I thought that was very bizarre. So, the other little device that she utilized was this little loop, and it was small. It was only 3-4 inches long, and she'd make a tight twist of grass and then twist the end together and knot it sometimes. Otherwise, she would just twist it on the spot, and when she clotted up too much, she would take the clot off with this little kind of stirrupy device, and she'd lay it off to the side of wherever she did that and just go on. So if you're looking for blood samples, that is a good potential way to find them. And once you find this going on in your research area, this is going to be somewhere in there. It's just a matter of finding these two. You're going to usually, well, let's see, I found them on ridge lines, I found them around streams. Mm, she utilized hers typically close to where she slept, and between where she drank water and where she slept. So those kinds of factors might also be relevant in your research areas, or, if you just happen chance to run across this sort of thing. So on to her behaviors. Hopefully the sun has been today because the clouds have been back and forth. So her foraging behaviors, let's start there since that's kind of somewhat of what was going on. And, these grass traps, I've heard people talk about them, seeing them in other places. So this might be something that particular Oh'ma group uses, because she claimed she was an Oh'ma person. But my grandmother and mother both said that Skookum and Yaren use these kinds of grass traps too, if I remember right. So that's something you might find elsewhere. But these, so far, all the ones that use this particular little grass trap seem to be friendlies. They don't seem to be cannibals. So on that note, um, her other foraging behaviors. So we had about 15 acres of property, and on the south end of our property, we had a small oak forest. A couple of the trees had come down in the Columbus Day storm the year before I was born, and around the time I turned 7-ish, she started breaking into one of them because it became termite infested. And we'd listen to her pounding on that thing at night. She'd use a big rock. It was about softball-sized rock. And she'd pound on it. And then she had one of those little hook picks. She was picking stuff out, pounding the fibers. Part of the reason why I know it splits the fibers when they use a hammerstone like that, because a hammerstone is something just about every indigenous prehistoric individual on the planet's used, just a plain rock. So it's the simplest tool. It's called a hammerstone. So, I go look at the progress on the log, and it wasn't a small log. It was about 3 foot thick and about 12 foot long. So it took her about a year and about a year, roughly, to squish the heck out of it, get everything out of it, and she'd come back to it. If it wasn't infested enough, she'd come back to it. She'd leave it alone for a while, let it get more termites going on. And along that log, when she was working on it, she'd also leave kana and kanji a lot along that area because it got kind of worn flat on one side because she wore the grass down, going back and forth doing her thing. So that was my first introduction to, her language. It's more than just names and little devices to indicate, good food, bad food, etc. And then when we planted our gardens, oh gosh, I was about 6 when we planted our gardens, and we had two. We had a half acre and a 1/4 acre garden plot. We didn't put the bigger one in until I was about 7 or 8, I think. So we just had the little 1/4 acre lot for the first couple of years she was there. Because she came onto our property when I was about 4 1/2. And when we put our garden in, once things started, maturing and you could tell what they were, and she'd already been there about 2 years when we put our garden in, she'd put a white stone at the end of each row of whatever vegetable she liked, and she'd put a black stone wherever there was something she didn't like. So, I'd go collect out of the garden whatever she wanted. And I had to ask my mom. I went in when I found all the stones at the ends. I asked my mom what it was about because I'd never seen the behavior before. I never saw her do that before. My mom comes out and she looks at it. She says, "Oh, she likes this food. She doesn't like that food. That's what's going on. You just take her the things here from this row and leave the things alone in the rows with the black stones." Okay, Mom. So it was something my mother was aware of, something natives used to be aware of. If you want to make a good trade, you put a white stone down. If you don't like the trade, you put a black stone down. It's a yes, no answer, just like the ancient Greeks and Romans when they were voting. Yes or no. Black means no, white means yes, kind of the same thing. I find that very interesting personally. So she never really made a lot of loud sounds. The only really loud sound she ever really made was the scream. When she was first on the property and she was screaming for a mate. And that, sounded like a woman getting murdered. So everybody kind of in the neighborhood got used to it. It was just there. We all knew it wasn't somebody getting murdered. And that was, something you couldn't really hide. Everybody in the neighborhood could hear that going on. And then, just the overall behavior. She stayed on the ground. During the day, she was on the ground. If she wasn't sitting down, she was laying down. Majority of the time, she was just sitting, though. Occasionally, she would get up and walk during the day. But it would be like the very first year she was there, that first winter when I was she uh, she got too hungry, and she started robbing pens, and take half the food off of the top of the pen. We'd put about 16 ounces to 20 ounces of food down on top of each pen twice a day, 3 times a day with kits on. So we noticed, in a particular building on the ranch, the first 10, 20, 10 to 20 pens would have disturbance in the food. And you could tell, fingers scooped the food off, but she wasn't taking the whole amount. So my mom got in the habit, because that was a building she'd commonly go through, and it did have a closed door. It did have 10-foot roof on it. The overall length of the building was 100 feet, and there were 50 pens aside. So I had initially convinced her to just take a pinch of food, because, Mom noticed there was too much being missing. And then my mom got in the habit, she put in right at the beginning of the pens, and to the right-hand side of the door, because it was always the right-hand pens that she seemed to take from, but she was also right-handed, so that made sense. Mom put I think it was a piece of shingle, cedar shingle that she'd smoothed down a bit, and she'd put about 20 ounces of food. Whenever she fed the mink, she'd put that out for Jinjin. And the food was typically, it has to be 100% fresh for mink. You cannot have any rotten material in your food at all, or your herd gets sick. So it has to be clean food. It has to be fresh food. It was normally fish. We'd also feed them chicken, turkey, beef, occasionally trim, from other packing facilities. So we bought a lot of our feed directly from processing plants, and then, bring it home and process it out for the mink feed. So it was always fresh, and we always added vitamins, that sort of thing to it. So, overall it was a healthy diet for, we could eat it if we wanted. Not that you'd want to, because, some of that stuff, turkey and fish, or fish you could eat, but turkey and chicken you're taking salmonella risks. So my mom just started feeding her, and trying to judge about how much she ate a day was kind of difficult, because even following her around, she'd get up in the morning. So she slept in our chicken coop, our old chicken coop that wasn't being used anymore. And it was right next to my dad's lathe shop and his little foundry that he had. So never knew she was there. It was really hilarious. So she'd sleep on the bare ground, and it was just a small coop. It was maybe 8 or 10 feet long and maybe 6 feet across. It had about 20 chickens in it at one point in time, 15 or 20, and they were open range chickens. There was never any real back pen to it. We just wired up the door side so critters couldn't get in at night, foxes or stuff like that. So she'd sleep in there on the bare ground, and it was cleaned out when the chickens were gone. Everything had been removed anyway, and there wasn't anything stored in it. So she'd sleep in there, and she popped the back of the chicken coop open a little bit so that she could get in. She didn't go in and out the door because people could see her on that side, though there was some overgrowth on that side too. There was a bit of blackberry overgrowth in that area. So she just kind of popped the back of the coop open to get in. So she'd get up in the morning, she'd go to the spring, she would wash her face, clean herself, she'd wash her hands, wash her rear end, wash her feet, she'd drink clean water, then she'd come back up underneath the berries, the blackberry bushes that she was living under, and this was underneath our poplar grove. And our poplar grove was bambwood. It was for making boats. My dad had planted the stuff. By the time I was a kid, I was about 40 years old. So some of the trees were 3 to 4 foot thick and between 80 and 100 feet tall. And there was a good probably 30 trees in that stand. So it was a pretty good sized stand. And that was, underneath that was where the blackberries were that she was living in. So she'd come back from her morning ablutions and she would start by nibbling on the like center pith of old blackberry stems. Didn't seem particularly delicious to me, but it was part of her diet. She'd do that for 20, 30 minutes. That would be her breakfast sometime. She'd also start looking for anything she could catch, little stuff. She'd go next to where she'd sun in the afternoon. She'd hang there because there was a bit of a, she turned and rolled the blackberries away and made kind of this like shelf area and kind of a bubble, you know, bold area. So it was kind of inviting in the right light for critters to come. She checked to see if there were anything there that she could take. Then she'd go out, usually to the back side of the buildings, and she'd start foraging for roots. She'd look for frogs. She'd look for mice. And this, throughout the day, this was her routine. She'd move to different locations. She'd get up around the back side of the grinding building, get to rats, catch 2 or 3 of those a day. And when I was checking her traps, because it was me that checked her traps during the day, I get 2, 3 birds a day, a couple of mice, maybe a lizard or a frog. So she wasn't really eating a huge amount of material as far as I could tell. She did kind of graze throughout the day, but it didn't seem like a huge amount of stuff, and she didn't really take a lot of big things. She'd harvest some of the wild stuff in the area too. She'd take apples off my grandmother's apple trees when those came on. She'd eat grapes when they came on. She'd collect walnuts. She'd go after the filberts. And, it was just a basic daily routine. Whatever was available is what she ate, for the most part. And then, she would store a few of the filberts and stuff with her where she slept. I don't know if she stored stuff elsewhere. Possible. I have found others that do and have. Uh, and then, the other ones that came onto the property trying to court her. The first one that arrived that was a no. Uh, he tried to go up the poplar tree next to where she'd put her marker, where she'd broken the branch. So the first month she was there, my grandmother arrived and visited for my 5th birthday, and my grandmother and her actually ended up meeting because, well, Jenjin had knocked on the bubble that we were sleeping in. My grandmother had a little, I think it was about a 14-foot old-timey little bubble camper that she slept in. It had just a little stove, sink, heater, and, closet and bed sort of thing. Bathroom, if I remember right. And it was a real small little thing, though. So the very first night that my grandmother was there, I slept with my grandmother to say, hey, we're telling stories and whatnot. And as we were drifting off, Jen pounded on the side of rocked the trailer and then pounded on the side of the little travel trailer. And oofed. My grandmother's response, native, she slapped the wall back and oofed back. Slam. Oof. My territory, go away, you're too close. The two of them were talking. So the next thing is Jen tried the doorknob. So my grandmother, reached over and locked the door, and then she looked at me and she says, how long has she been here? And I said, well, I've been talking to her for about 2 weeks. I've been going under the bushes with her, and, this is where she's sleeping. And she says, so your parents know? I said, well, Mom knows. Dad, we told him, but he don't want to think about it. So my grandmother That was her automatic response. And, the following day I had to show my grandmother where she was, and her and Jenjin sat under the bushes for quite some time that day, and the following day too. Then there was a big powwow with my mom and Jenjin and my grandmother, and there were some pictures taken, that sort of thing, but I don't have those anymore, unfortunately. So for my grandmother and for my mother, this was a normal thing. When one comes visiting, you just go out and sit down and talk to them. You say hi. So I think that's a very different perspective and tradition than most people have. And I don't think it's an understanding that's modernly known. I mean, there's still a few medicine people that are reported to be able to do that, and a few tribal people that can still do that. But it doesn't seem to be as common as it once was, and nowhere as common as it seemed to have been in my family. So her behaviors, especially with that first one that came in, and so I just kind of gave you a little fill in on that introductory with mom, grandma, and all that stuff. But the first prospective suitor that came in was a sun-faced individual. So he was pale-skinned like us. She didn't like him, and he was bold enough when my parents left the following day to go pick up feed. They go out to the coast or up to kill houses, about once a week go get feed. And, during kit season, that was twice a week, so it was a lot of work. 5 tons of food a week at least to 10 tons of food a week being fed to the animals. So when he had tried to court her the night before, we'd heard a fight, and there was some growling, there was some grunting, like the fight was, like there was a fight, like a fist fight of some sort, because you could hear it. But he wasn't as big as she was. He was maybe a foot shorter. So he wasn't fully developed. He was a younger one. So anyway, the following day when my parents left, and it's just my grandmother babysitting me, and I was running around being a kid, I noticed he was up in the poplar tree. At first I thought it was Jenjin because I was used to seeing her up in our trees. A canopy was good enough that she could sit up there sometimes and not be noticed if there was no wind, nothing really. If you weren't underneath her, you wouldn't see her. So when I looked up, I thought, oh, it's Jenjin up there. And then I realized, oh, it's not the right shape for Jenjin. It's too small, and his hair's longer, and he's got the wrong color skin. About the time I'm realizing it's not Jenjin, something else is up our poplar tree. Here comes Jenjin around the end of the last little #1 mink building there. And she realized he was up the tree. She went right up the tree after him, grabbed him by the hind leg, and tossed him out of the tree. And that tree was probably 100 feet tall. He hit with a pretty good thud. And he did break a couple branches on the way down because she just straight pulled him out of the tree. And then she climbed down a bit and then jumped, landed on him, and beat the crap out of him and forced him off, go back down behind the buildings and leave the property. The next one that came, we heard talking. We didn't hear any arguments. There was some sit evidence at the end of Building 7, which was behind our grinding room and adjacent to our old barn. So that one had come to an agreement with her, no marriage, and something didn't match, but there was no argument over it. And then the third one that came, and these were all individuals that came over this course of like the first 2 years or so that she was there. The third one that came, no, the second one was Guanch, because she told me what he looked like and told me what he was. I didn't get to see him, just the sit evidence and hear them talking at night. The third one that came, I was about 7 or 8. Yeah, it was just before my 8th birthday, actually, when the third one came. He was brown-haired. The other two had been black-haired. And he was really young. He was only about 7 foot tall. 6.5 maybe, because he was sitting down. I couldn't really tell for sure. Slender build, very juvenile build, hadn't filled in yet. Very kind-hearted. I got to actually talk to him because he showed up late in the afternoon, and I caught them talking. And he spoke English. He's the one that had said he'd learned English by listening to people's TVs and watching TV through their windows. So he would sit under people's windows to listen to them talk, or associate the behavior. He'd look to see what was going on if he couldn't understand something. And that's how he had learned to speak English. Now, I'd already taught Jenjin how to speak English, so, yeah, we were already able to converse that way. But I was unaware at my young age that another one that I hadn't taught might also be able to speak English. So it was an interesting thing for me to understand and to learn that day. So, yeah, he was, I asked her why he didn't, match up. Why isn't this one good enough? And she was afraid he was too young, wouldn't be strong enough to defend her and her children. So I guess there are those factors too when they are considering marriage. Yeah, and the only really loud behavior she had was when the Gugway showed up on the property a few months after that. That initial day, she baseball bat slammed the hell out of a poplar tree with a 4-inch thick stick about 3 feet long and busted it just like it was nothing, like a toothpick. That was a definite, warning. And then, she turned to me and told me to run my house. Run, go home. And, the Gugway was coming around the other end of the building, so I understood what was up. The other behaviors that she had, she would, when the Gugway came on to the property and was getting too close to our house, she'd pound on the side of our house, let us know. Also, she got in the habit when dogs came onto the property previously to that, she would pound on the side of the house to let us know. Then there were all her funny little play behaviors that she did with me. I'd try to get her to do things with me, not just sitting and eating, because I'd take her sandwiches once a day too. Whenever I had lunch, I'd take lunch to her. I'd insist. And if not, I'd go back in and I'd make something for her. So, to me, she wasn't eating more than what we ate every day. Maybe a tad bit more, a couple pounds more in food, because, I don't know what she ate at night. But there was never any buildup of bones piling up anywhere. There was no decapitated bodies of things laying around anywhere. Her foraging seemed to be pretty minimal. It was non-invasive, really non-invasive. She'd eat mushrooms. She'd eat, pretty much just anything and everything, just a little bit here, a little bit there. But it was, just very omnivorous. It was incredibly omnivorous, very small, and not noticeable. Until something odd, like, the fish disappearing off the top of the mink pens, until something was really obvious, you wouldn't have noticed she was ever there. She did eat a pheasant once a year for her birthday. I believe her birthday was in March, if I remember right. I can't remember for sure. I think it was in the springtime, if I remember, though. But she'd take a pheasant. Occasionally she'd take a bigger bird. But it was, I think, just because it was there, potentially. Excuse me, my ears feel like they want to pop. The weather's been fun. So let me try to get on to some questions before y'all get ahead of me too far. And, ouch. Yeah, my arthritis has been killing me. Alright. Okay. Hey Cosmic, when I saw that in the description, I was like, heck yeah, I want to know how she caught birds. Yeah, I've seen that particular trap a couple other times in different places over the years, but it seems to be kind of a rarity. But I'm pretty sure the Oh'ma use it because I have heard from people that are hunters in this area. They've seen those sort of things out and about. Okay. Okay, so the grass teepees, yeah, they would average, depending on the height of the grass. She'd usually not start making them until the grass hit about 3 feet. So, she'd have a 1.5 foot base, 18 inch, 20 inch base, 3 foot up. Um, but it seemed to be better when they got a little taller. When the grass was about 4 foot, the traps seemed to be a little more stable and would last longer and catch better. Yeah, I find that also very interesting. Okay. Any preferences on types of rocks and hammerstones? Yes, cosmic. Blah! My God, I am so sorry about that. It's been a long week for me. I had to change buildings this week again. We had somebody quit. Moved on to a new job, put it that way. So, hammerstones. She grabbed river rock off of our property. From what I remember, it was a lot of river rock. I think she found a piece of granite, round rock, one point in time. She seemed to like that one a lot. Because she could only use the river rock so long before she'd start to crack it, or it'd start to chip. She did chip one of the river rock ones, and she kept both the chip and the original hammerstone. And she'd use uh, both of the pieces as different kinds of tools. The one she used more like a little cutter to cut things, to etch things, to write things. That was the little flat kind of round chip that came off. And then that kind of sharper edge on the round stone she'd use to cut bark or to incise around something with. So she kept those for a while. And I gave her, at one point in time, I gave her some old metal toolbox, and she would put her tools in the toolbox. And that I would find her tools in the toolbox in various places on the ranch at different times of the year. And she'd keep it closer to the place she slept in wintertime so it wouldn't get wet. And she kept it, out underneath, usually ends of the old buildings, or she'd put it up underneath a bush somewhere where she was utilizing her tools, and then she'd go store it. So that was the sort of thing, another sort of thing that she'd do. And I was the one that gave her the toolbox. I asked my parents if I could do that. Mom's only condition was that she had to be able to close the toolbox latch before I could give it to her, and she could. That, her thumb, though it was set further back on her hand and was a little bit shorter than ours, she still could. She still had this sort of movement with her thumb, so she could still latch stuff. Though, it took her a bit to understand not to crush the box, because her strength was a little too much for it at the beginning. I had to show her not to hold it too tight. Probably because she was used to holding things like stone, she wasn't realizing, hey, some of this stuff's a little gimpier. Okay, Phil, the Bigfoot group here seemed to go elsewhere for winter. Any idea where? Yeah, they'll usually go to a sunnier ridgeline or a high valley box canyon. It just depends on where their high point is. Um, so if you know where their summer bed system is, look where they're exiting, because they'll usually go not too far away, typically only half a mile to 2 miles into a new location for winter. So it's findable, but they usually like to choose a warmer ridgeline during the winter. Just like we used to when we were camping as indigenous, archaic people. They use the same sorts of tactics. And okay, Cosmic. Any idea why they throw all sorts of rocks on certain flat roofs to the point that the flat roof is full of rocks? Hmm. I've only had one incident of that sort of behavior, and that was out of the dog man I was around, Cosmic. When I was living in the yurt, you couldn't get a rock to stay on the yurt roof because, well, it's slanted. However, across my little tiny parking lot, which was maybe 30, 40 feet across or around in all directions, just enough to turn around in and park a couple extra vehicles. There was a little storage shed that had a flat roof. That's where the bear liked to sit to try to bug you. It was just down from the fire break road and, you know, 40 feet away from my front door. So, stuff would get thrown onto that metal roof, I'm assuming in an attempt to scare away the bear. And that I discovered the night I started throwing stuff at the bear to try to chase it away because it was bugging me when I was trying to get my groceries out of my freaking trunk. I wanted to be able to move because I didn't trust it being that close to where I was. Gosh, this light issue here. Sorry about this, guys. So, yeah, it would throw, the dog man would throw flipping rocks and chunks of wood up on top of that roof, I think in an attempt to try to help me scare the bear away. But it might be just an attempt to scare you away if it's on your roof. Maybe they're trying to intimidate you or warn you of something. It just kind of depends. A lot of the stuff I've experienced with that kind of behavior has been warnings. Maybe that'll change this up a little bit. My gosh, dog kicking the door. Some of it might be warnings. Out in the Umpqua where I go and, feed some of the Bigfoot out there and hang out with them, they'll grab the top of my Jeep and, grab a rail and shake my vehicle to wake me up when the bigger dog man's coming through, or when a cougar is coming through. They've done that a couple of times for those sorts of things. They'll slap the side of my vehicle. So might be something like that. Maybe they're trying to warn you, maybe they're trying to drive you out. It just depends on which end of the angle you're at. Or they're trying to drive something else out. Okay. Hey, Pat. So those of you who have watched the latest, what's your opinion on them being able to cloak at will off infrared? Well, we can actually do that too. But it's probably just practiced skill. Cosmic, not yet. Okay, that's to another individual. Hey, happy journey. How's you doing? I'm at work. Oh, cool. Well, glad you were able to join us, and thank you guys for joining me here today. Let me see. Well, let's see, Ben. I wonder what Jenjin's resting heart and respiration rate was at that time. Well, let me think, because I actually did take her pulse when she got bit. I think she had like 40 or 45 beats a minute, if I remember. It was really low. And I remember taking her temperature. It was a little higher than ours, if I remember right. It was like 101 or 102, I think, was her body temperature. Because, yeah, I was a little concerned. But then at the same time, I didn't know what her normal was when she got bit by the gugway. So I don't know if those were normal temperatures for her or not, or if they're uh, correct pulse rate or not. I just remember she had a really low heart rate. And when she slept, her respiration was very, very subtle. She'd have a breath, and then it wouldn't be for a while. She had this very one in, and it took a long time for her to exhale in her sleeping pattern. And I know that because I'd been in there multiple times while she was asleep. I'd nap next to her, like when it would get too hot. She'd go and retreat and sleep. She'd sleep on her side, and I'd curl up with my back next to hers, and I'd sleep on the dirt with her. I'd lay my blanket down, of course, but nobody around. You don't want to be bothered. You're meditating. You're sitting with your big hairy friend. I'd go rest with her. I'd sit in her lap every once in a while too, when she was doing stuff. So it, to me, it was just another hairy person on the property, more or less. I mean, she never, when she touched me or picked me up or handled me, she never hurt me. She always understood her strength. So that was never a concern or even really thought. And then she did the peculiar stuff, when my dad cleared out the underbrush next to our house to make a little play area for me next to my already existent playground. I got a tree fort area. She rang she went and wrung the branches of the cedar trees, and they were good 3-inch diameter branches, maybe 4 inches. She wrung those until they were limp, and I could just bend them any direction I wanted. So her strength was pretty significant. Um, she didn't ever make a lot of loud noises. She wasn't really overtly noticeable. In fact, it seemed like her daily life was pretty innocuous in the ability for you to bother her or see her or notice her. Her overall behavior put her on the ground, uh, put her in a routine of basically foraging and sitting in hidden spots, resting in hidden spots. She didn't make any really loud sounds. She didn't get all territorial. She didn't care who came on or went off the property. There was nothing about her day-to-day behavior that would have even indicated she was there. Because until you noticed her sitting somewhere out in the flippin' open, or you accidentally caught her walking between buildings, you'd never know she was there. And that was the other, is occasionally she would, during the day, walk between buildings. Especially when Mom would leave that little plate of food for her. She'd walk over to that building, grab her plate of food. And half the time she'd forget to close the door, so I'd go and close the door so she could eat in peace. And the neighbor wouldn't see her, because if he got out in his back 40, he might see her. So we were always paying attention to that and making sure she wasn't getting noticed. Because we understood, our neighbors would freak the hell out if they saw her on our property. It would have been, some sort of a nightmare for them. So, her behaviors weren't overt. And even the stuff out that the individuals I've interacted with in other areas, they are not typically aggressive. They aren't typically overt. Occasionally they will be warning, they'll warn me out. Oh yes, cosmic. She would break the necks of the animals. She'd just roll her thumb over their head, break their neck, and in the case of snake, she'd shake the body, make sure it was limp before she'd eat it. So she'd always put the animal down before she ate it. And with frogs, she actually pithed them, and it's something I didn't show her to do. The first time I saw her eat a frog, I didn't know where she'd learned that. I mean, I understood what pithing was because it was part of what I had to learn for autopsy purposes. My father had explained it to me. But she took we had a neighbor that had a devil tree that had like big ass spikes on it, 3-inch long spikes. She'd gotten one of those. And when I brought her the frog, she pithed it. She put it down before she ate it with a little spike. So her her entire philosophy about eating was that she was not to scare or harm the animal. The animal had to be already dead. They had to not die violently. It had to be a quick, peaceful death. And she'd pray for them. It was every time. She would pray for the animal to be born as something other than a food animal. So, these were her daily routines. These were her unusual daily behaviors. But, probably normal for her within her culture. Doesn't mean that all of them act like that. Because I'm pretty sure that her culture is just the Oh'ma culture. From the discussions I had with Guanch, the few months that I got to interact with him when I was growing up, he was part of the Deer Society, he had completely different upbringing. His family group, physically hunted animals with tools. Her family group didn't, so that's a difference in behavior. The Skookum that I've been trying to work trade with here, they're heavy tool users. I know they hunt. Um, so it just depends on which species you're dealing with, which race you're dealing with, however that works. I don't know enough about their genetics to really be able to make a determinant factor on that one. Okay. Well, Jenjin never walked dimensionally anywhere. She was always physically there. She'd been there between, like 1968 and 1974-ish. So, no, I never saw her walk in and out of dimensions, never saw her walk through walls. She was a physical being just like you or I. I mean, I don't know about other species, because there are other cryptids out there that can do some very unusual things. Like, here's one for you my grandmother told me of. The Nohulu. The Nohulu were the descendants of, what do you call them? The Adena Mound people, Sitka. Now, to get into the Sitka, the word Sitka has two meanings. Sitka means tule eater and thigh eater. So there are stories within the native culture saying that the Sitka were tule eaters that came here on tule boats across the Pacific Ocean. They came from another land and they immigrated here. They were giants, they were red-haired, this sort of Lovelock cave stuff. Nuhulu is also something that Jenjin spoke of her myth cycles. She was aware of six-fingered giants with double rows of teeth. So the Sitka supposedly came here. They fathered the Aluigi people and Telwigi people. Those two sets of groups, the Sitka and their first offspring, were prone to having 7 toes and 7 fingers. The Sitka, in particular, were known for having 7 fingers and 7 toes. Not so much with the Luigi or Teluigi, and then the later Nuhulu. Now, the Nuhulu, there are a couple of different stories about the Nuhulu. Some say that they're the great-grandchildren of the Sitka, and that's why the Sitka's second name is called the Thigh Eater, when they turned cannibalistic. But my grandmother said that may not be the case, may have not have been the case. And Jenjan's stories indicated the same thing as my grandmother's. The Nuhulu are also known as the fish people, but they're not, good gods. They don't bring you a harvest of good fish. They are carnivorous people that came out of the ocean and are spiritual beings that can walk through dimensions and make you think things that are not there. They are supposed wizards. So there are some other stories to pay attention to. And the Nuhulu were also considered six-fingered giants, also with red hair and fair skin. All of these people were prone to supposedly wearing red body paint and burying their dead with red paint or red ochre, and some of them were even reported to use cochineal as part of the coloring for their deceased or for their body paint. So, more investigation on that, but those myths might be more in point to the shapeshifter end of things, the Nephilim end of things, and the just the whole dark end of walking through walls and stuff, because that's not normal for Bigfoot to do. So those might be some myth cycles to learn and look into some of those particular lores. My grandmother spoke of those sorts of kind of crossover things too. So she was aware of that sort of concept of Niflheim, but she always claimed they were the six-fingered giants, not Bigfoot. So go look into the Nuhulu. Well, I don't get to typically see these critters. The skookum that come here, I've gotten to see the boy twice, and that's only because my dog bothered him in the backyard and cornered him a couple times, thinking he was something else. The second time he had jumped off the roof. That's how I knew um, it wasn't a normal cat or raccoon. Too big for one. The thud, he had been 68 pounds, somewhere in that range, because when I caught up to my dog next to him, he looked, even sitting down, he looked like he was about 3 foot, maybe 4 foot in height. So he's a young Bigfoot. He's a toddler, what you consider a growing toddler. But I've only ever seen him at night. He's jet black as far as I know. He's just been in dark enough areas I can't tell what color his hair is because there isn't a lot of light in this backyard region area. Hey, Cosmic, were those grass weaving techniques similar to basket weaving? Did Jenjin make baskets? I never saw Jenjin make a basket. I did give her a pouch, but I think she ended up trading that away. So I don't think she ever really used any kind of a carry device. I think there was enough food on our 10 acres, 15 acres that she didn't have a need to pack a lot of stuff around. And she did use the little metal toolbox kind of to put stuff in every once in a while. I'd open it every once in a while and find like stored stuff like roots or mushrooms, that sort of, perishable but not perishable grapes, that sort of thing I'd find in there, but I wouldn't find animals in it, so I don't think she ever stored any of the animals. I know she didn't eat any carrion because she always ate everything fresh. Yep, I can believe that, Pat. Yeah, whooping is pretty common for all of these critters, including the dogmen up here in this area. Yep, I'm in Oregon too, Pat. I'm down in the Willamette Valley. Well, this group, I noticed them being in the yard about 2 weeks or so after I moved here last year in the middle of summer. So this particular group's probably been habitually coming into this yard far longer than I knew they were here. I just noticed them because of their ground communication and some of the oddities in this yard. You know, the entire grapevine getting stripped in one night of all of its fruit, that sort of thing. You know, fingernail tapping on the window at night. Hey! No, I didn't mean to startle you. Stop. It's okay. You're good. Stop. You alright? I didn't mean to startle her. But yeah, that sort of thing happens on my window occasionally at night. Tapping on the side of the house, you know. But you know, I had to figure out they were here first and try to interact with them before they, you know, started letting me know that they come walk through the front gate, because they do come through the front gate and close it behind themselves. So I don't think that's a regular behavior for a primate, other than us. Well, yeah, it's probably the entire, you know, female side of the family group. I've counted up to 6 of them around this area within 30-40 feet of this yard at night. Typically, it seems like there is at least one adult or juvenile and one or two young that come into the yard pretty regularly when they show up, because they'll do it for 2-3 nights in a row and then they disappear again. I won't see them for a month or two and then they'll show up again. Summertime it's a little more frequent. And that's just because family groups travel together. You know, when they're out hunting, the traveling groups, the family groups that still travel together at night will still travel together at night. Yeah, well, you can be standing right next to them, Pat, and not even realize that they're there. Had that happen to me more than once. Hey, Mercy. Hi, Wisa. You're well, you're working with. Oh, good. Hey, glad you're here. Thank you. Okay. Well, then she must have been actually running a fever, Mercy. I was wondering about that, because it seemed like she was. But then, you know, I could believe that with the size of the bite marks that were on her, and the fact that they took her a while to heal from them, put it that way. Okay, her having a, yes, Ben, her having a heart rate and low respiration means low efficient metabolism. Could explain her eating less than you would expect. Yeah, I've oftentimes wondered that, to be honest, Ben. Pat, I'm still fighting with the interdimensional shit, but it's hard to say I don't. I claim it's out there. Skinwalker Ranch. Well, when you're getting into the more paranormal, you're probably not dealing with a Bigfoot. You're probably dealing with some other cryptid out there. My native grandmother's stories included a ton of other kinds of things that are actually out there besides just Bigfoot. And some of them are very well known to be dimensional beings and or, what you considered magic people, you know, able to do unusual things. Infrared would not see Bigfoot. Have a lower body temp. Well, I have a lower body temp and it can still see me. You can still see anything that has a heat signature with infrared. It's going to be fainter, not unseeable. Yes, you're correct, Phil. The juveniles can be more obnoxious. All right, all right. So I don't think I've got any other questions. Okay, Sky, I've had them change the weather through me. Always get an eye out for more info. Interesting. Hey, Mercy, it's true. I said that the reason that the hand was raised was meeting strangers, was to see a number of fingers. Yes, that's why Native Americans always did, Hakazao, how, whatever Oma, whatever, excuse me, not Oma, whatever greeting we used tribally, in their particular groups. But yeah, we always showed our hand to show that we had 5 fingers, not, less or more. In particular, make sure we weren't talking to somebody who was a giant descendant with 6 fingers. Yeah, probably go talk to somebody from the more Midwest area. I know the Sioux still believe this sort of thing about the hand gesture. Oh, those beach structures are probably fishing huts, be my guess. Where they come and they'll sit for a time to fish. Because that was always what I was told these structures on the beaches were for, was for when they came to fish. They come to clam, they come to fish, they'd take from the ocean what they needed, and they would stay in a hut while they were doing so. At least that's what my parent lineage always claimed. My native grandmother, my native mother. That was always the explanation I was given. Oh yeah, those structures are for collecting, food items. So you have a little bit to sleep under while you're there, doing your thing, net fishing or whatever. Oh yeah, Pat. As far as I know, they're completely 100% physical, just like you or I. And the reason why they're so much stronger than us is because they probably don't have any fat layers. Probably like all other larger critters than us, primate-wise, probably got a layer of, muscle where our fat layer is. Because that was something I noticed with her bite mark on her arm and on her neck. Is she didn't seem to have much of a fat layer. And then I also want to say a little bit about why some of them have always look absolutely neat and clean. That's because some of these species, especially the guanche and the Oh'ma, their fur, maybe even the dogman, their fur is a lot more like mink pelt than it is normal hair like chimpanzee hair or orangutan hair. Others of these species do have more primate-like hair. The Yeren, Skakkum, and some of the other species like the Gugwe all have very primate-like hair, body hair. So they will have a more mixed up, muddy mess. Also a little longer hair. It grows 3 to 6 inches instead of 2 inches. And has a tendency to tangle more. And it's not so it will be out of place. It will, you know, shabby looking. Well, Pat, the Bigfoot that came to our mink ranch when I was a kid was a very physical creature, and it existed on our ranch for what, almost 4.5 years, something like that. And it was a daily creature. You know, it was just like any other thing on the property. It was there physically, and you could touch it, you could interact with it. And the only reason I think she came there was just because it was an advantageous location. It had everything she needed. It had water, it had shelter, it had food, and it had, you know, a family that didn't try to push her out or was freaked out by her. Yeah, no problem, Danny. Tony. Hey, Leona. How you doing? Oh, good. I'm glad you've been out and about traveling. How would Jenjin react to our music? She liked some of our music, Ben. I used to notice she'd sneak up in the side yard if there was nobody around and I was playing music. Because we had a hi-fi record player in the living room. I got that fifth birthday. So, yeah, she used to sneak up when there was nobody around. And she'd sit next to the house and listen. I catch her doing that quite often. And I've other Bigfoot that I've interacted with, like out in the Umpqua. They'll groove on music. And I've seen that out camping, you know, group camping with people, and they'll have music or have something going on, and every once in a while you'll see, you know, Bigfoot sitting around in the periphery. If you notice them and you realize they're there, yeah, and you'll find them there. Some of them are very attracted to music, actually. And on that note, most things that seem to be entertainment and attraction to us seem to be entertainment and attraction to them. We do seem to share those sorts of common likes and dislikes. You know, just like Jinjin playing with my stuff. Like when my dad was making, he taught me how to make paper boats. And first couple of times I played with them in the puddle, you know, I lay them back up on the surface and let them uh, dry out overnight. You know, the first couple of nights, they come out and my little paper boats would be floating in the puddle because Jen Jen had been messing with them and playing with them and trying to figure out what they were. So I just have to explain to her what they were and to put them back up on the side when she was done. She had enough smarts to do that. So they're very curious about a lot of the stuff that we have and that we do, it seems. And there have been plenty of times I've got Bigfoot around, you know, major groups of people just observing us, watching us. They seem to be serious people watchers. And I've even caught some of them coming into town just to watch fireworks when we used to have fireworks. That was always interesting. It'd be an uptick in Bigfoot when we could set fireworks off. They'd come to see it. So they weren't being frightened by certain things, they were just curious about them. Okay, are you? Is that rockstone at the left of you are the tool? No, I don't think that's a tool. I think it's a stone that may have been brought there, placed, or left there, or something maybe I hadn't noticed because it was overgrown, but pretty sure I weeded everything out of there that area last year, and I don't remember it being there, so it might have been something that's been brought in place, and I just hadn't noticed it till now. No, I'm still trying to get a tool out of him for what I've got to offer. The problem is it's probably not going to be sufficient to get what I want. But it was a way of giving you guys an example of the kinds of levels of trade you can go to with them, and what you kind of have to do. I've tried this route once before with another group trying to trade for a tool, and I used two bought smoked fish, and for some reason they didn't like that. Didn't get my tool. So I guess I'm either have to go catch some trout and smoke it myself, or uh, try to see if I can rack up enough credit with fish sticks to warrant a discarded tool. Oh yeah, well the Nahulu were known. My grandmother always claimed the Nahulu were the Nephilim. They were, you know, Nahulu were said to have the double rows of teeth. That was like the skull that I looked at. The fish people. Just the stories that she told about them. They had very bad behaviors. They ate people. They had strange intercourse relationships. They had religious behaviors that were peculiar. Um, a lot of the stuff that was has been talked about them as the Nahulu were they fit the bill in a lot of the descriptions of Niflheim. They seem to fit the same kind of thing. They're fair skinned. They're 6 fingered. They were 8, 9, 10 feet tall, 12 feet tall in some cases. As short as 6 foot for some of their females. Um, and my grandmother claimed that the Nuhulu spoke a different language. I don't know how true that is, and I don't know if her belief said it was an archaic form of, uh, you know, not this country's or this nation's people's language. She thought they might speak Hebrew, um, or may have spoken, and she said there was the Los Luno tablet. She said there was some boulder somewhere or some stone face somewhere that had carvings in it of the language that they spoke, um, or that she claimed that they spoke. I haven't seen it. I don't know exactly where it is. I think it's in the Midwest somewhere, maybe Ohio area or something like that, if I remember right. Um, but until, something is found or divulged, I mean, there were 2,500 giant skeletons that were taken to the Smithsonian and never talked about again. I'm pretty sure any of our older evidence, archaeological evidence, probably stored somewhere in a building or a basement and nobody's looking at it. If we manage to get some Nahulu skeletons, and there've been stories, there've been write-ups in newspapers and journals and stuff in the past that suggested that a lot of unusual stuff was found here, giant-wise, in the United States, and just kind of housed away and never talked about again. Uh, so the Nahulu in most native minds seems to be more to the point of being similar to the what you call Nephilim. But at the same time, if you take a look at the Kandahar giant, in Afghanistan. It has a very similar description. It was also red haired, wasn't fair skinned, it was gray skinned, but it did have 6 toes and 6 fingers. And supposedly dressed in skins and wore red body paint. Don't know. Uh, could be some sort of a relation there. Maybe it's the same family group of, you know, or species of giants. Maybe they're cousin species of giants. I don't know. Uh, but it's unusual that two similar descriptions, three similar descriptions at this point. I'm glad that you appreciate what I'm attempting to do, attempting to try to share. I'm just trying to give some of my grandmother's knowledge out so that after I'm gone, hopefully this information will continue on. Hopefully, it will give some seeds of truth in the future, or maybe it will help us understand what we've lost. Maybe we can reestablish communication in some way with some of these cryptid people out there. It would be interesting to see. For some reason, my friend always gets me here in the middle of it live. Okay, Sky, they got drama in their families. Yes, yes, they do. Pat, I did find an amazing 1,200-pound animal can move from tree to tree with minimal sound. Oh, yeah, it's pretty insane how quickly they move and how fluid they move. Uh, well, let's see, Pat. A 2x4 laying on its side can support what, 200 pounds? And that's just a cut 2x4. So, tree 18 inches thick should be able to hold something 800 pounds. A tree that's two foot thick should be able to hold something that's 1,000 pounds at least. Hey, Sky. Yeah, it's amazing. Some of the creatures that will be fascinated by, like either sound or some sort of visual thing. Uh, no, All right, Kevin. Forgive the question. Did you ever notice fleas, lice, ticks, etc. on Jenjin? Uh, she didn't seem to have a lot of problems with that. The only thing she seemed to have an issue with, she'd get spiders in her fur. That was the biggest thing. Occasionally she'd get fleas, um, but spiders. For some reason, spiders like to crawl in their fur. And that was something she didn't like having on her. She was very particular about getting them off of her, and she always wanted to know if they were brown in color. I think she'd been bitten when she was younger, or she'd had, no, it was uh, one of the tribal kids had been bitten and had passed from a brown spider of some sort. So she was always a little paranoid about spiders being in her fur. But I'm assuming, they would have, just like any other critter, a potential for all of that sort of thing if they were exposed to it. But she seemed to be more or less clean. She never seemed to really have to groom herself much other than just wash her face and her hands and her feet and stuff. Um, she didn't, her, her, her hair was so short, it was only 2 inches. She really didn't have anything that could get messed up. And then she had like an undercoat to her hair, like a pelt. So her and the Oh'ma and the Guanche seem to have hair that doesn't get messed up and doesn't retain a lot of bad odors, it doesn't seem. She didn't seem to stink, as far as I could tell, and she was never, she never had a dirty rear end or anything like that. I mean, some of them probably don't bathe, but some do. And I don't know if that's a, tribal thing, cultural thing, location thing, if they've been taught to do it. I don't know enough about them to know that one. But I do know that some do bathe, and they are meticulous about it, and some don't. And the ones I typically run across that don't bathe seem to be sick or elderly. But maybe that's just my luck. And I have found up in the Washington area, a lot of the structures that I found had cedar bark strips and shredded cedar bark, that sort of thing, or cedar boughs in a lot of the bed systems up there. So I'm assuming the ones up in Washington definitely have a problem with, probably fleas and stuff like that. I know that they remove ticks with infrasound, and they'll do it as soon as a tick gets on them. They'll at it and it just curls up and dies and falls off of them, so to speak. And if they end up with an infestation, they'll do the same thing. They will, hit that area of their body with infrasound or your body with infrasound in order to remove tick larvae from you. So, and that's something natives knew about them. They always claimed that they used infrasound to remove ticks from their own bodies or from the bodies of people in their communities. That was their cure for it. And there were natives that would go to them, I got a tick, I can't get the dang thing out. Because, once the head breaks off in you and all the little egg sacs hatch, you got a tick infestation of larvae crawling around in the layer between your skin and your muscles and your fat layer. That's not fun. And you have to get things out. And, modern doctors don't take them out these days. They don't even seem to have a concept that goes on. But us old timers know that. Because once you've been bit, you've been infested by a whole bunch of eggs. So yeah, Native Indians would reportedly go to them to have ticks removed. At least that's what my grandmother used to claim. She'd say, "Oh yeah, they'll hit you with infrasound. They'll kill, they'll make them leave your body. They'll crawl out of your body, and they'll do so within 24 hours, 48 hours." And that happened to me. I got hit by infrasound by my adopted Guanch father, and it removed larvae from my body. And yeah, I don't doubt that story anymore. So I know they get rid of ticks that way. I know that the red-haired giants and the Bigfoot are not related because they don't. The red-haired giants came from here, and the Bigfoot have never associated with them. They don't like them. They're sort of like the Gugway. They stay the hell away from them, or they did. I don't think they coerce with them today, either. No, I don't think they're related in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, put some liquid smoke on those fish sticks. That's a good idea. Uh, okay, what do you think? Is it possible Bigfoot are just wild people, unshaved and covered in animal skins that would explain the smell and full body hairiness? Well, the one I was on the ranch with, you had to pluck her hair out of her body, so I don't think it's a fur coat that you hang on you like a skin. Um, and the other ones that I've seen, their hair grows out of their skin just like, the hair on their head grows out of our skin, but all over their bodies. So no, I don't think that's a possibility. I don't think they're just feral people. That and they're too big, and they have too many other characteristics that are not like us. Okay, Mercy. About the hair, the reason they are able to camouflage so well is the shafts of their hair are hollow in a way, uh, plus colors, diffuses light. Think of chocolate brown Siberian cat. That works like. Well, there is that theory, but wolves have hollow hair. Uh, my particular dog that I have at my side currently has hollow hair. Um, there are a few other creatures on this planet that have hollow hair, just like Bigfoot, and none of them disappear. I think more to the point, uh, the way that they hide from us is that they understand very well how they blend into their surroundings. And they also understand optical illusion very well. And they take advantage of our visual gullibility. Um, some people will say, "Oh yeah, they'll disappear behind a log, or they disappear behind a tree, or they disappear behind a stump." You know, maybe they're stepping into a blind that you aren't aware is there. Maybe they're stepping into a tree that happens to be hollow and you aren't aware that it's hollow. Maybe they are camouflaging your perception of them through your mind. Don't know. The ones I've been around, though, don't seem to disappear. I mean, I've found hollow trees that they boonied into. I've found the backs of trees that they've climbed up away from me after they peeked around the tree and looked at me, and then they climb up the backside of the dang tree, and they're up in the freaking foliage when you get around behind the tree. Um, but I haven't seen them disappear. I've seen them pull some pretty sneaky tactics to make you think they disappear. Uh, but I haven't run across anything like that yet. And I've been around a lot of these things, and at different points in my life, with, in the company of other people as well, like my mom. Uh, it a lot of what people think doesn't make any sense because it's not been an experience type that I've had. No, I don't think that they're the watchers. I don't think that they're manipulating us. Oh yeah, there are stories all around the world about giants. But then take a look at the size of an Adam and Eve. Weren't they like 10 or 15 feet tall? I think a lot of us were potentially giants at one point in time, or there were a lot of other things here that are no longer alive, hopefully. Wow, that's interesting, Mercy. Okay, Pat. Well, they have recovered many bones of giant people as they did exist. Yep, that's very true. In fact, the British Museum has a giant skeleton in their basement. Okay. Okay, back in the mid-90s when the comet was passing, I seen it like kind of weird things deep in the Florida Everglades that week. Oh wow. What do you think about that? Yeah, that's up there what to think. Okay, Mercy. They do fundraising galas. Oh wow. Alright. So I don't think there were any really peculiar behaviors that she did. Ben, did Jenjin ever just come out with a surprising, like, non sequitur? observation or statement. She was, for the most part, incredibly quiet. Tried to teach her how to play checkers one day. Then she stole my checkers board. She opened my back door and took it off the top of my armoire. That went missing for a few months. When I finally found it, she had set it up to play against herself, and she'd gotten frustrated and swept the pieces across the board. So I think she'd finally understood it was a tactics game. It was a tactician game that I had been trying to teach her, and it had frustrated her that it took her that long to figure it out. That was unusual, but she never talked about it. When she took care of the flying squirrel that had been hurt, that had damaged its leg, she wouldn't let me mess with it or call it to me or get it, wasn't to make the animal too familiar with me. She said it had to go back to the wild. So her concepts seem to be very much like ours. You nurture a thing until it's healed of its wounds. You don't make it into a pet and you return it to nature. Non sequitur, no. I mean, even when I found the polywog puddles, when the polywog puddles would dry up, and she'd sprinkle flower petals across them, uh, it was because she was praying for the polywogs. I think the most non sequitur thing would be that we all came from a polywog pond, except, when you look back at the Ordovician period, and if you look at that as our origin point, which it is, then we all originally were some sort of life form in water before we became land-born critters when we crawled out of the water. So I think that would be about the most non sequitur, except it really isn't all that non sequitur. It's a similar concept to what we have. We look at our anthropologically geological aspect of our history and our creation. Okay. Mercy. Okay. No, yes, back forth to Bill. Yeah, infrasound does have its uses. Definitely. I mean, she used Jenjin utilized infrasound when she was knocking out the birds and stuff. She'd at them and make them all goofy, and they'd spin around on the ground, disoriented, and they couldn't fly. They'd be flopping. Um, and then, she'd pick them up, break their necks, and have them for lunch, and pray over them before she ate them, that sort of thing. But it infrasound seems like they have a pretty pinpoint ability to use their infrasound. It seems like they're very adept at utilizing it. Oh yeah, Phil. Tim Baker talks about the shofar horn calling Bigfoot. Yeah, you can call them with a vibro slap, a kazoo, a shofar, the right kind of drum beat. Uh, Heck, play Mongolian throat singing. They come to that one too. They love that shit. Bone whistles, willow whistles. Um, I even have a horn they'll come to. It's not a shofar. They also come to conch shells being blown. They'll come to a certain scream if you know how to make it. There's a lot of different sounds that'll actually show up and look at you and go, "What the heck are you doing?" And part of it might be because the shofar works on the infrasound level too. Some horns that are made of horn actually do have a sequence of sounds in there that's comparable to some of the infrasound levels. There is that um, potential, but there are plenty of other tools, including flutes and stuff, that will on bugles. Oh my God, my dad was at Fort Lewis. He mustered in and out of Fort Lewis during World War II, and he served as a drill sergeant at Fort Lewis. He said the McCord side, the back side where you do all your training, there's a ton of Bigfoot activity out all around Fort Lewis McCord base. And he said that in the morning, the revelry bugle, because I don't think they do bugle anymore, but they used to, especially on that base. He said every once in a while there'd be a Bigfoot out in the freaking forest that would roar back at the bugle. It was pretty common. It happened a couple times during the week, on the average. It was kind of well known. In fact, that base, if you shoot a Bigfoot on that base, it's only $1 fine, and you go to Fort Leavenworth for the rest of your life and crack rock. So I'm pretty sure that particular base is aware that they exist. Fun. Okay, Cosmic. I saw the episode on AFOB. Oh, okay, Phil. Sorry. Wrong one. We get to my questions. No, I don't think that Jenjin was a man-made doppelganger of any kind. The government can't even clone these things. I don't think they could genetically manipulate them. They can't even clone them. I don't. Besides, there are too many stories of these Bigfoot people being around for hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of years. I think they're just another species of humanoid, or maybe we're just another species of cryptid. And I think they're just part of the evolutionary chain that we don't want to recognize or think about. I think that's what it really boils down to. I think that Bigfoot is just another humanoid of some sort, or something that science can't quite put a pin on because they can't stick it in either animal or human category without somebody getting butt hurt. So more likely they're just another critter. I have enjoyed your channel. Have a good day, and thank you, viewers. And, oh, cool. Have a great one, Pat. Thank you for dropping in. So, ever here, when we die, our life will be purged. Well, okay. Any more questions? Yep, shaman residence. That is a good Hobkirk. That is a good observation. Alright. Now, I don't see... Hey, Ice Cream Dolly. How you doing? Long time no see. Things are good. Hope you've been doing well, doll. That guy, I wanted to just made a massive Mayan flute. It's something else. Nice. Yeah, they'll even come to a piccolo whistle. The little seed whistle. Native American seed whistle. Piccolo. There are all kinds of sounds that Bigfoot will actually come investigate. It's not that unusual, actually. I mean, yeah, you're probably going to get more results with bigger sounds in some cases, especially if it's an oddball sound that they're not familiar with. They'll come and investigate it just because it's something that shouldn't be there. But, it's probably just them being curious. I don't think it has anything to do with any past lore of that nature. Besides, these things have been here too long. Uh, the mythology of the Nephilim's what, 6,000, 7,000 years old? Not ancient history. And these things in this valley have been here long enough that there are, petrified tracks and rock bed that's 94 to 145 million years old. So I think the cryptids in this valley have been here for at least that period of time, for that length of time. So I think it puts them well past the stories of the Niflheim. But the giants coming here, the first wave of giants supposedly came over the ocean. The ones that were good, the ones that were Thule eaters, the ones that interacted with us and helped us build Cahokia and some of the other cities, etc. Um, they came here about 4,000 years ago, maybe 5,000 years ago, uh, from what most of the stories say. And then the Nahalu, the stories vary on that, but they seem to be more modern, something that came here within the last 1 or 2 years. So, or at least it came into our understanding of things a couple of thousand years ago, whether they came across the Pacific or not. But if they did come across the Pacific in reed boats, like some claim, that's interesting. If they walked up out of the water as fish people that, magically transformed, that's even more entertaining, because that really puts the Nuhulu in that group. And that sounds very Niflheimish to me. But that's not stuff that Bigfoot can do that I'm aware of. At least it's nothing I've ever seen any of them do. Sky, this is confirming I've had their interest in the throat singing. Yeah, one of the Yaran out in the Umpqua area, they actually, one of their males sang one of the songs back that I've been regularly playing, and he did a really good job. He was in tune, he carried the tune correctly, he spoke the words correctly, he sang in a really deep voice. So he liked the music well enough to repeat it and sing it back. And that's something you'll occasionally find. It's hard to get them to do that. They have to be pretty comfortable with you, or they have to think nobody's listening. But to have a response like that's also very good confirmation that, hey man, they like music. And I've seen them more than once, sneaking up on events, just to watch them, especially if they're bigger events and they can get any kind of a view or listen to music, they'll do it. Ben, I think they indicate our presence with the break stick. I think it means more about us compared to them. Just calmness in the woods. Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think the snap stick is about us. It seems to be about us anyway, or at least something coming through their territory. It's a monitoring device. Snap, hey, there's something here. And it's a subtle way of letting their internal group know there's something in the area, and the individual's none the wiser, the critter's none the wiser, that's being observed or that's intruding. Hey, Hobkirk. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for saying I made a good observation here, Tracker. You said that to me last time when I mentioned about, uh, yep, concordance. Yeah, it's once you start crawling in the mindset of these things, you start to realize they have a lot of characteristics that are unlike other primates other than us. I mean, they do the whole ground communication thing. They lay the kana down. They use a lot of tools. They have a tendency to even do the same kind of behaviors that we would be tempted to do if we're sitting out in the woods being bored. Hey, let's watch the humans. What are they doing? You grab lunch, watch the humans. You don't interact with them. They don't. I don't think they like us that much. But hey, you can get around them. You can get up to them. And if you are, oh, and I wanted to say something about the concept of coughing or clearing your throat. Yes, learned that the cough stops an attack. But my uncle also claimed that clearing your throat, which is something my native grandmother also claimed, clearing your throat, coughing, or even making a couple of gestures saying, hey, I'm a friend, takes you further in establishing the beginnings of communication with a cryptid Bigfoot than you might think. And my uncle Long claimed that it's good to announce yourself uh, because it's a way of letting them know you are not there to do harm. It was also kind of traditional in tribal systems. You announced yourselves. Now, some of these announcements could be very, very subtle. Like when you got down in the South American Indians, you'd make your tribal symbol with your hands at the edge of the bush line while you're sitting inside of a bush so the tribal people coming into your land could see just your hands and just the symbol that was being made under the leaves to determine whether or not they wanted to walk any further into your land. So there's that sort of element that we don't know anymore that Native Americans did and South American natives did in order to facilitate, hey, I'm here, this is my area. The snapstick's just a subtler version of it, and it's warning against instead of trying to make contact. And you're making hand symbols out from underneath bush leaves with your hands. You're trying to establish contact, and you're trying to give your totem animal or show which tribe you're from. Those sorts of things are going to be more archaic ways of communicating. It's not something that we think about these days. So that's something to keep in mind when you're trying to deal with a potentially archaic species of humanoid. I mean, if these guys are more humanoid, then their behaviors might be more like archaic people. And they might have appreciations for similar things like archaic people. You know, potentially that's why they like music and maybe singing so much. Because I have heard, even in this area, I've heard music, what you would consider music, not multiple instruments. It'll be banging on a tree or it'll be banging on a device that sounds like a drum, but it's a bucket or something else. But it is a rhythm that's being popped out. And I've heard that in different areas of forests in Washington and Oregon. Occasionally you'll find a place where you'll hear flute music, or you'll hear drumming, or you'll hear chanting or singing. Some of it's Bigfoot, some of it isn't. But if you're dealing with a mentality is more like an archaic human, that would make more sense that those sorts of elements would be a potential communication or potential interest or a potential thing that might be done by them. Well, I know, are you? Do they dance or sway to the music? I know of one up in the Umpqua that camps out just below the Dogman's territory. It's actually a pair that will sit there in that particular ravine. I think they work kind of as guards to keep the dogman away from the rest of the family group. If you pump the music in that area, come down to about 15 feet above your camp and sit in this little sway back, and you'll think you're not able to see him, but if you, because it's kind of narrow in that area, if you get out a little further, you can look up at him, you can see him, he'll be sitting there as you're playing music, he'll be bobbing his head back and forth. So yeah, they keep rhythm. Okay, Hopkirk, you agreed with me last time about universal consciousness and how the universe actually works was a while ago. I was just thinking I missed you sharing and me learning your knowledge this live. Oh, yeah, that's an awesome. Thank you. Uh, well, Sky, I did actually manage to teach one to yodel, but only one, and it's Sonoma. And it kind of came around by accident. I was trying to figure out how to interact with him because I could see where he was sitting in a tree, but I didn't have any way of making any difference to him up in the tree. And it was kind of a drizzly day, and there weren't a lot of people about. In fact, there was nobody about because it was such a drizzly day. So I started trying to yodel, 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 see if I could get him to respond at all. I probably did that for 15 or 20 minutes, goofing around. I didn't get a response. But a couple weeks later, when I went back, and it was another similar drizzly day, he was up in that tree perch and he was actually yodeling. And he was making the very same sounds I had made. And he still yodels occasionally, um, every once in a while up there in that area. Doesn't happen very often, but it's interesting when it does happen. If I ever catch him doing it again, I'm going to record him. Um, so yeah, sometimes they'll copy what you do. My uncle claimed that he'd also ran across some while he was on res learning how to silversmith, and that he had taught them how to yodel and throw their voices. So I think they can do some of the same stuff that we can, and they pick up on stuff like that pretty quick. I wouldn't doubt Cosmic. There might be some out there that yodel now, because I taught that one. I think it was 2012 or 2013, somewhere in there is when I taught him to yodel. So it's been a good 10 years or so. Who knows how far they've taken that sound. Yeah, if it turns out to be a good joke, everybody will know it. Oh, thanks, Sky. Well, to me, from the observations I had, especially with Jenjin on the ranch, I could follow her around. And she'd stop, she'd turn, see if I was following, make sure I was okay. There was never any unusual movement patterns with her. She seemed to be very, very in tune with things. She seemed to understand a lot of the stuff that was going on around her. She didn't seem like a dumb animal by any means. She was aware that we were killing animals. She was aware that we were skinning them. Uh, she was aware that we were feeding them. It wasn't anything abnormal to her. It wasn't foreign. So she'd probably seen people all of her life, be my guess. Her family supposedly lived up on the mountainside behind us somewhere. And I'm sure, wherever they lived, they were probably around farmers or other people and seen stuff, we do all the time. Just like all the ones in this valley here. I mean, there are plenty of evidence that there's tons of them everywhere. They just kind of keep to themselves. They observe us. They stay out of our way unless, you know, we interact with them in some way that it piques their interest. If you can get their interest piqued, then you have a place to go. They have a tendency to interact a little more. Once they figure out that you can, maybe figure out their trail talk, or maybe you can lay down a kana or two, or you can answer a kana or kanji or two, and you understand what it means. once you start showing that you got a few brains between your ears, they become way more friendly. Um, and they get way more curious about you. And they start trying to interact and goof around with you more. Uh, like the how I realized they were here the other night. I had an owl sitting in the same spot for 4.5 flipping hours. Owls don't sit in the same spot making a call for 4.5 hours in the same spot. It just does not happen. They will mess with you too. They'll do the obvious and see if you can figure it out. I've had them goof around making echo sounds, see if I can catch which one's closer to the house. Uh, they'll mess with you, but it's not done in a harmful or bad way. I think they're just trying to figure out how smart you are. If you can keep up with their smarts, they're more likely to talk to you. Okay, funny factoid, the Cosmic. There was an underground hip hop producer called that tribe called Yes. Turns out they also name a certain squatch. Oh, cool. So yeah, when Jenjin was on the ranch, she pretty much stayed to herself. She did her thing. She didn't do anything overtly bad. The first couple of weeks, she was trying to get settled into the fort area that I had made and the old chicken coop. She did go through one of the buildings, the mink buildings, building 7. She killed a couple of mink there because they were screaming at her. I think it startled her, and I think she was afraid she was going to be noticed or detected, so she killed those animals. But once we let her know not to do that, uh, and that we didn't mind that she was there, she stopped being defensive and she stopped, doing that behavior. So there was never, there was never anything in my head that made me think that she was overtly animal-like. She always communicated, and it wasn't telepathically. She used words. My at first it was in her language, and I'd have to get my mom to tell me how to talk to her. Because my mom would have to translate for me until I figured out enough of the language I could talk to her. And then, it became my goal to teach her English so I could talk to her in my language, wouldn't have to learn hers. So her interactions never seemed to be dangerous. They were guardant, they were protective, uh, they were, just normal behaviors for an average creature. Her behavior pattern never really changed. It was pretty consistent. Even when she was under attack, she never took anything out on me. I was never the object, or was my family ever an object of reprisal for what was going on with the Gugway or anything like that. No, her behavior was always very consistent. It was incredibly uh, human in a lot of ways. So it really puzzles me what kind of behaviors are going on out in the wild. Because even out in the wilds, unless I've gotten into an area where I don't feel comfortable and I don't want to stay to begin with, which I don't, I leave those kind of areas because I'm aware there are other kinds of cryptids out there other than Bigfoot. But any of the locations that I've been out, even in the woods with Bigfoot, I've never had any kind of an inclination that I was going to get killed. There was never an inclination that I was under severe pressure to leave, except a couple times. It's not been any kind of, I don't know. I just maybe I've been really flippin' lucky. Maybe I'm just really lucky that way, and I haven't stepped into a stupid situation yet that's gonna get me killed. That's possible. Ben, was the hair on her scalp like ours, different than body hair, thicker, uh, constantly growing. No, her hair, her body hair overall, just like the guanche. The ones that look like chimpanzees, the Oh'ma, and the guanche, which look like Patty, they look like gorillas. They both seem to share a pelt. It seems to be mink-like, and their hair on their heads doesn't grow any longer than the rest of the hair on their body, which on average is about 2 inches in length. So I don't think that those particular species are capable of growing longer hair on their head. At least not that I'm aware of. Although, the ones that have more chimpanzee-like hair, Skookum, the Yeren, they can sometimes grow longer hair on their head, from what I've been told, and from what the lore says. Are you? After you taught Jenjin English, did she ask? Ever question you any questions? Oh yeah, she asked about what we did in the house. She asked how we cooked our food. She asked about airplanes because she didn't know what they were. She wanted to know what the flying things were that didn't look like birds, but looked like birds were. So I had to explain to her what an airplane was. Um, she asked me what a car was, how it worked, what made it work. Um, she was actually pretty curious about a lot of our stuff, it seemed. Okay. So, I don't know. She never really, she never got angry. Never saw her in a state, even when she was having to deal with, well, even when she tossed the one out of the tree, she didn't roar at it. She didn't, like, make any kind of sound at it. She just went up, grabbed it, chucked it. And even when she beat it up, she didn't look like she was particularly pissed off at it. She just wanted it to go away. Because she didn't see it as a good species to keep around the house, I guess. Sun-faced person, not something she wanted to mate with. That was obvious. But she didn't ever turn that sort of behavior on anybody in the family. The only time she ever did anything to the family was the day my dad had me do a trick shot when I was 7. My dad had me shoot a couple of hairs off the top of my head by bouncing a bullet. And Jen Jen was at the side of the grinding room. She watched that happen, and she crap spackled my dad. She turned around, butt up in the air, and just sprayed him with little speckles of poo or scent gland stuff. It was sticky, made a mess of his clothes. He didn't know what the hell happened. He thought he'd been hit by a skunk, but he figured it was the biggest damn skunk he'd ever been hit by. Couldn't find her. I never told him it was her that had done that to him. So they do have that ability too. Uh, and I don't know how many people have experienced that, but I know at least one incident. So it was the only thing that I noticed that she had an ill response to, and it was over the kid being potentially in danger. Dad got crab spackled for it. Funny stuff, in my opinion. Oh, you can ask as many questions as you like. If I can read them, I will answer them if I know the answer. If I don't know the answer, I will tell you I don't know shit. Oh yeah, I make sure that they all will go up. And I wonder how tonight's going to be after the owl sitting out here and goofing off the other night and all the little trail communications been going on. Oh, and I have a handprint. There was a handprint on my vehicle today. It's kind of a tiny little print. It's about the size of the palm of my hand, maybe, maybe. Uh, it was a little partial. I don't have anything to pull the print off my vehicle with, but it's nice greasy little print. It's even got a little bit of hair denoted on the print. I did film a brief, like minute-long film, maybe 55 seconds. I'll put that up after this because there was fingerprint evidence there. It's just I don't have any way of lifting it off my vehicle, so I don't have any way of doing it. And tomorrow, it probably won't be there. Who knows? But I gotta take my vehicle into the shop anyway, so I won't have the ability to pull the print anytime soon. But I noted it. I will put it up as a little recording because I do find it interesting. I'll occasionally have that experience when I'm out in the woods. I'll either get, like handprints on the vehicle, or I'll get drawings on my vehicle. Occasionally at some of the places I've worked, they'll draw on my vehicle or mess around with my vehicle. Put stuff on my vehicle, flowers and pieces of, bark or kanna. I've had kanna laid out on the hood of my Jeep once. That was fun. And some oddball experiences with my dog camping in my vehicle with me. There have been a couple of times where she has tried to sniff what walks through camp through the glass, so she'll leave nose prints in the shape of what she's been sniffing at. And somewhere I have an old picture of like 3 Bigfoot that had to have walked through camp, or one that had through a couple of times. She'd tried to sniff it several times and accidentally ended up drawing the outline with her nose of the walking through camp. And there are some people in this area that do have Bigfoot that habitually draw on their vehicles. I've talked to a couple of those people saying, hey, you really might want to consider... Stop. Hey! Quiet. Enough. Hey! Just a visitor. Come here. Come here. What you doing? Sorry about that. Hey, barky girl. What? 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 Hey, quiet. No. Sit down. Down. Knock it off. We know. I heard it. Ah, yeah, grumpy. Stop. Stop. Hey. Enough. Jerry's getting the door. Stop. Come here. Hush. Oh'ma, stop it. Stop. Alright, well, I think I may have to go. I think she's having a freak out moment. Hey. Stop. I know you're trying to protect me from the neighbor. It's alright. Stop. Hey. Stop. You're alright. Ah, yeah. My god, dog. Try to protect me. I know. You don't need to be riling yourself up, though, puppy. You still have stitches of healing, goofus. Stop. Hey. Stop. Hey. Enough. Okay. Are you sure when Uncle went to town, did he ever see TV? Was he aware of world events? Oh yeah, Uncle Long. Oh, he used to watch the news. That was one of the things when he'd come over to the house. He liked Jacques Cousteau. He liked news. He liked Dr. Oh God, what was that? He liked the Tom Baker. God dang it. The British sitcom. thing, Doctor Who, like that. So yeah, Uncle Long kept up on modern things for the most part, and that was always something he'd be asking about, what was going on, who's doing what with who, what's the politics like, what's my favorite show doing. Yeah, he really liked that Doctor Who show. Thought that was a lot of fun. Okay, Ben, her asking about the hours. Do you think she wanted to come in? Did she want to ride in a car? You know, she seemed to be just curious about what things were. It didn't seem like she wanted a lot to do with us per se. Even when I tried to like convince her to weigh herself, I had to make it into a game so she'd play along and she'd hop on the chain to give me a chance to look at her weight. And she realized I was trying to trick her, so she also asked me if I wanted to round two in the doghouse. And I told her no, I didn't, because I was just trying to figure out what her weight was. But if I would have admitted that, I'd probably been in round two in the doghouse. No, I don't want to be in the doghouse again. So she had a very corrective nature, very parental-like nature to her in some regards. That it seemed like she was just more or less curious about what we thought of things, and what we had and what we did with things and why we did what we did. But it didn't seem like it was something she wanted to partake in per se. Yeah, well, Cosmic, the dog's not going to get on camera. She's going to get relaxed here, though. Stop being a brat. Okay. Well, here she's pinned, aren't you, baby? Are you gonna do anything other than sulk that I told you no? Oh yeah, okay. You're wagging your tail at me. Yeah. Just karma being protective. Yeah, Uncle Long was pretty fun. He was a character for sure. I definitely liked to play the Tom Baker role in public. That was one of his little fun things. He'd offer people, the fake rock candy. And occasionally he'd have a real rock in there, mess with you. And present it like a Tom Baker. Yeah, Jelly Baby, would you like a rock? It was cute. Very cute. Yeah, this little brat's, she's part Catahoula and part Telomane. She's an oddball, little wild thing. So she gets herself all worked up if there's something around she doesn't think is appropriate. She'll definitely let me know. So, no, a lot of her little communications and stuff, she'd tap rocks at me. She'd leave the kana down for me. She'd leave little directional markers for me. She'd do all the same stuff that I've been trying to show you guys in my videos. Just try to show you some of the basic behaviors, and I'm trying to show what from the standpoint of what I understand. From what I saw as a child and what I experienced as a child, and things that seemed to be consistent in their behaviors, and things I was taught that were consistent in their behaviors. So hopefully that sort of thing will be, something that can be utilized by other people, and it'll make it easier for you to either do your research or at least help you understand what's in the wild around you. Now the dangers is that, some other cryptids that are not so cool also use the same sort of language. So, Gugway also uses this sort of thing, as do some of the other not so savory cryptids. So keep that in mind. You actually have to learn a few other things about particular diet, what separates them in behavior, just to be on the safe side. So unless anyone else has some... Well, that was my alarm. So unless we have more questions, since it's been about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I'm trying to think if there was anything else I hadn't really covered about her behaviors. I know that she did a lot of natural foraging, a lot of hand foraging. She pretty much ate everything on the spot. She didn't really pluck the birds of any feathers. She didn't skin the animals in any way. It was just natural consumption. Leona, I saw a video with a cryptid that looks like a donkey dog. Oh, a moyuk. Yeah, I've been wondering if there were any of them still around. Because the potential one here, moyuk, there have been some sightings, I think, up in the Alaskas, or Canada, I can't remember which, but it's potential they're still around. Um, my grandmother said they mostly look like shepherds, black-haired, with a mule-like head. I don't know if they got longer haired varieties of them. Um, supposedly a burro's head in a dog's body is the moyuk, and they will grab a hold of a dog and shake a dog half to death. So, we'll see. I'd love to see some more videos. I'd love to see some videos. I've heard about them. I haven't run across a video yet of one. I did see a short of a potential moyuk recently, but it was pretty far off and kind of dark after evening time, so it was hard to tell exactly what it was, just to make sure. I'd like to see it in more daylight conditions, but it is what it is. I'm sorry that Karma was so loud on you guys. She does have a very deep bark for her size. And sorry about the alarm, I forgot to turn it off. So I don't know over the next couple of weeks. I've got this new building that I'm working in. So I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to do another... I might be able to do one more live next weekend, but I don't know how busy this building is going to make me and how tired it's going to make me, because it's a way bigger building than I'm used to working. So I might go back to mostly doing videos and posting those for a while, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do lives very much for a while until my body adjusts to the new schedule and to all of the work. Hopefully that won't take me too long. So don't be too disappointed if you don't see me on lives over the next couple weeks. Hopefully it won't go on any longer than that. Hey, you're alright, Goofus Girl. Other than that, I'll just be keeping you posted with whatever's going on in this area. Try to do a few more Reikis through different areas if I can find other areas. And this, after the repairs are done this week on my vehicle, hopefully I'll start being able to get out, be able to get down to Cottage Grove Lake more. Want to try to do some like interviews with local people down there this summer, if anybody's willing, because I know a lot of the locals realize there are cryptids in that area, and it might be interesting for y'all to get some of their opinions and their thoughts on the matter. And maybe I'll do a under the hat kind of interviews with people, because a lot of people don't want to show their faces or have their names known in association with cryptids. It's still sort of a taboo topic. Hey, stop. Oh, cool. I am glad you're putting up a new one, Cosmic. You've always got such nice films of structures. See a lot of those down in the Humboldt County area, Northern California, Redwoods. You'll see that sort of structures. You'll see those similar structures all up and down the rivers, and you'll see them out in the beaches. That's pretty regular in some areas, actually. Oh, thank you, Ben. I'm glad you guys like the show. Oh, cool, Phil. Well, I'm glad you guys are getting together. I'm glad you guys are sharing stuff with each other. And I'm glad that we're all able to, like, throw in on this project, so to speak. You know, the more we can understand of the topic, the easier it might be to resolve what's out there. I mean, there were a ton of myths about other critters around this planet until we discovered them. So it's just a matter of time, hopefully. Anywho, I will have to let you go. Hope you guys have a great one. Thank you again for participating in my channel and having a time set aside for me. I appreciate that. I'm really glad to share this information and really happy that you guys have been such strong supporters, absolute nails. I love you guys. And I'm glad you're open-minded and interested in just, learning what we can learn. I'm sure there's plenty out there about them I don't know. And, it's just good to throw into the basket of things. I'll see if I can get you some more good footage of whatever's in the area here soon. Especially now that the weather's starting to clear. Be able to be out and about more. That'll be really, really nice. Hey, Leona. Appreciate you guys too. Thank you, everyone. And glad you had a good afternoon with me. All right, guys. You take care. And hopefully here I will have some more good stuff to put up for you. I'm going to try to get back over by Shaman Dogman's area. Hopefully here soon. See if his tools are still there over the winter. If they haven't moved, then I'm pretty sure he's passed on. And the little bit of conti gifts that were over there that suggested maybe one of his kids or somebody had been chosen to take his place. Hopefully I'll see some more sign of that. And maybe get some more voice or call sounds from around here. So, we'll see how it goes. And as things progress, I will definitely put more up. Alrighty, guys. You have a good one. And thanks for hanging tough with me. Appreciate you guys. Oh, yeah. Big love from the furry families. Yay! Right on. Have a good evening, everyone. And thank you again, Cosmic, for helping out.